one.
He's got a good selection of green lights. His daughter lives in Roundtable. Oh, really? Yeah. He's practicing a lot of cars. He's got practicing on stage. Great guy. Hello, my friend. Thank you. How are you? We all look very busy. We can't focus on ourselves and our things when we're on the circle representing the Council of Europe.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. His Excellencies Ambassador Almquist, Ambassador Fagerland, distinguished guests, dear colleagues and friends. It is my great pleasure to welcome you this morning to the European Youth Center Budapest for this roundtable on deliberative democracy, co-organized with the Embassy of Ireland in Hungary. I am delighted to see so many committed actors from across government, civil society, academia, and the youth sector gathered here to discuss a topic that lies at the heart of Europe's democratic future. Across the continent, democracy is facing profound challenges. Levels of trust in institutions are falling, political participation is uneven, polarization is rising, and many young people fear their voices simply do not matter. We see signs of disengagement and frustration with traditional democratic channels, and at the same time, public expectations are also changing. Citizens want to be heard, they want to be part of the solutions, and they seek meaningful ways to shape the decisions that affect their lives. The Council of Europe has long recognized that democracy cannot stand still. Our founding mission, built on human rights, the rule of law, and democracy, requires continuous reflection and renewal. This is why 2 years ago, the Committee of Ministers adopted a recommendation on deliberative democracy, the first pan-European standard dedicated to guiding member states in the design and implementation of high-quality deliberative processes. Deliberative democracy, as we know, is not a replacement for representative democracy. Rather, it's a complement. It's a means to deepen participation, broaden inclusion, and strengthen legitimacy. It enables groups of citizens selected to reflect the diversity of society to deliberate together, consider evidence, and develop collective recommendations. Done well, it brings in otherwise overlooked voices. It encourages learning and dialogue, and it can transform mistrust into mutual understanding. As the Council of Europe's 2023 report on deliberative democracy stressed, such processes are demanding. They require resources, careful planning, independent facilitation, transparency, and accountability. But when these conditions are met, the benefits are significant: better policy outcomes, stronger social cohesion, and a renewed sense of trust in democratic institutions. Today's roundtable draws inspiration primarily from Ireland's experience, where citizens' assemblies have become an established feature of public life. They have enabled society to address some of its most sensitive and divisive issues through inclusive, respectful, and evidence-based dialogue. This shows us that deliberative democracy can make a tangible difference even on the hardest questions. Since first hearing about deliberative democracy and citizens' assemblies, my own belief in the power to address one of the most insidious features of our political discourse, algorithmically driven polarization, has only grown stronger. Done well and in line with the standards set by the Council of Europe, these processes can help us break down barriers between citizens, foster civil dialogue and on even the most difficult and contentious of issues, and deliver sound policy proposals for decision makers to adopt with the real promise of genuine societal support. But this event is not only about exchanging good practices. It is also about looking ahead. How can we embed deliberative methods more systematically in our democratic systems? How can we ensure that the recommendations of citizens' assemblies and other deliberative processes genuinely feed into decision-making? And crucially, how can we empower young people, not as subjects of democracy, but as co-creators of a much-needed democratic renewal? Too often, youth participation is limited to symbolic consultation. Young people are asked for their views, but not given a real role in shaping outcomes. Of course, the Council of Europe's youth sector has been a pioneer of meaningful youth participation through its unique co-management system. But this, unfortunately, remains the exception rather than the rule in the context of institutional approaches to youth involvement. Deliberative processes offer a different approach. They can give young people a seat at the table, allow their perspectives to be weighed on equal ground footing with others, and create a structured space where their ideas inform real decisions. When designed with fairness and inclusivity, deliberation ensures that youth voices are not just heard, but acted upon. This is precisely the ambition of the new event series, Strengthening Democratic Resilience Through Youth Engagement and Deliberative Democracy, which this roundtable inaugurates. Over the next 2 years, through dialogues, trainings, and hopefully also pilot youth citizens' assemblies, the series will aim to highlight how participatory and deliberative processes and approaches can not only amplify young people's voices, but also equip them with the civic skills and confidence needed to become the next generation of democratic leaders. This effort also connects directly with the Council of Europe's recently launched New Democratic Pact for Europe, which calls for a collective response to democratic backsliding, disinformation, and authoritarianism. The pact will serve as a collective and inclusive process, not to reinvent democracy, but to reinforce its foundations, amplify its benefits, and innovate its form to make it tangible for everyone, especially younger generations. Deliberative democracy and meaningful youth engagement are crucial ingredients in this strategy, ensuring that democratic renewal is not only institutional, but lived and experienced by citizens regardless of age, place of residence, or socioeconomic status. At the same time, let us not forget the broader geopolitical context. As recent analysis has shown, Central and Eastern Europe is on the front line of democratic backsliding and authoritarian pressures. Populism, disinformation, and institutional capture threaten to erode democratic norms. In this environment, citizens' assemblies are more than a governance innovation. They are a democratic defense mechanism. They can build resilience by strengthening citizens' agency, modeling a cooperative political culture, and enhancing transparency. They can also prevent the weaponization of divisive issues, safeguard against disinformation, and protect democratic life at the local level, often the last line of defense against authoritarian drift. Let me highlight one important aspect. Deliberative democracy is not a one-off experiment. It should not be a symbolic exercise, nor a consultation with no follow-up. For deliberation to be credible, the mandate must be clear, the outcomes must be heard, and decision makers must explain how they act on citizens' recommendations, or why, in some cases, they do not. This accountability is what makes deliberation more than a conversation. It makes it part of governance. Dear colleagues, our discussions today are timely and urgent. Around the world, authoritarian narratives are gaining ground. seeking to portray democracy as weak or inefficient. Our response must be to show that democracy can innovate, that it can adapt, and that it can deliver. Citizens' assemblies and other deliberative processes are one of the most powerful ways to do this, by opening up space for citizens to engage, to listen, and to shape the future together. In the spirit of this roundtable, let me conclude with 3 guiding thoughts. First, let us see deliberative democracy as an investment in trust, in inclusion, in the long-term health of our democratic institutions. Second, let us also recognize the role of young people as leaders and innovators, not only tomorrow, but today, in reimagining democracy. Deliberative processes can give them the meaningful participation they so often lack, moving from tokenism to true partnership. Third, let us commit to embedding deliberation into our systems in a genuine and sustainable way, so that it becomes not an exception, but a normal part of how we make decisions. I thank you for joining us in this important conversation, and I look forward to the insights, experiences, and proposals that will hopefully emerge from our dialogue today. Thank you very much. And can I ask Ambassador Almquist to deliver his opening speech?
But it's no use, says he. Force, hatred, history, all that. That's not life for men and women. Insult and hatred. And everybody knows that it's the very opposite of that that is really life. What? Says Alf. Love, says Bloom. I mean the opposite of hatred. Kedvish Baratheim, dear friends, dear Ballant, these are the words of Leopold Bloom, protagonist of James Joyce's Ulysses, the most famous character in all of Irish fiction, perhaps European literature, and an ethnic Hungarian, the son of a Zombathai Jew who migrates to Dublin. They come in what is my favourite of Ulysses' 18 chapters, titled Cyclops. It's set in a pub, as many Irish scenes are. It's narrated by the anonymous No Man, and it covers his exchanges with a cast of Dubliners. Amongst them our Hungarian hero, Bloom, and a one-eyed ethno-nationalist called the Citizen. The episode is memorable for many things. Above all, a profound exchange on what constitutes a nation and what, in Bloom's phrase, real life for men and women is. In effect, the essence of ethics and the question I think democracy seeks to help us answer. This is another bright and brilliant Budapest morning, but these are rather dark days where I fear our politics risks becoming ever narrower, more one-eyed, where insult and hatred are all too common, and the compassion and empathy Bloom epitomizes in short supply. In just this past week, we've witnessed a terrorist attack in Jerusalem, seen Israel's ongoing assault on Gaza. We've watched Russian missiles bombard Kyiv, drones threaten Poland and Romania. We've seen unprecedented strikes in Qatar and the assassination of a political commentator in the States. Force, hatred, history, all that. Whatever we may disagree on, we can agree on this. That's not life for men and women. Like Joyce's Ulysses, democracy has Greek origins. Demos, kratia, the people's rule. But as the European Convention on Human Rights attests, democracy is more than majoritarianism. Free elections are its foundation, but democracy requires also impartial rule of law and respect for fundamental rights. As Judge Brenda Hale, former British member of the Strasbourg Court, put it, democracy values everyone equally, even if the majority does not. Defending democracy, then, demands that we safeguard freedom of expression, association, and assembly. It requires that we promote and protect independent, impartial, and efficient judiciaries. And of course, it means guaranteeing the integrity of our electoral systems, recognizing that Democrats contest elections, not results. Nem fog aranyon arosta, they say here in Hungary. Rust cannot harm gold. Democracy is our world's most precious metal, but unlike gold, perhaps, it tarnishes easily. Without a free press, without civil society, without independent courts, it corrodes and eventually collapses. In too many parts of the world, in too many parts of this continent, it's at risk of doing so now. How can we work to restore its luster? As Ballant reflected, there's no single or easy answer, but one step, I think, is to learn from and share with each other, to take initiatives that have proven effective in renewing democracy in one context and adopt and adapt them to another. At its best, democracy, of all political systems, I think, delivers dignity. Through voice and vote, it should empower citizens to shape their state. But in a world where change seems the only constant, where communications are more than instant, a democracy must do more than engage its public in periodic elections. It must listen to them consistently, and critically, I think, make them feel heard. Ireland's democracy is a century old. Like all systems, and Art can speak to this, it has many quirks, idiosyncrasies, and limitations, but it has virtues too. Above all, the integrity of our media and the evenness of the playing field in which elections are contested, and which, as CEO of our Electoral Commission, Art O'Leary is charged with safeguarding. At times, it has shown an admirable openness too to innovation, of which the citizens' assemblies, which Art oversaw from 2012 on, are a really great example. Scrupulously independent and transparent, these assemblies provided a forum in which a representative body of citizens could gather over an extended period to consider key and contentious social questions and ultimately agree recommendations to guide our Parliament and inform our people. The referenda to which several of the assemblies led delivered some truly remarkable results, including marriage equality in Ireland a decade ago this year. But the process which Art steered was, for me, almost just as remarkable. In an age of algorithms and anonymous posts, we hear a lot of virtual town halls and town squares. But digital discourse, and we see examples of it here every day, can so often be polarizing. Like the data centers that power it, it generates great heat, but too often little light. The citizens' assemblies Art oversaw were just the opposite. They brought citizens together in person. They provided them with facts and informed opinion. They enabled them to engage with one another in meaningful, deliberative exchange. The meetings were, at times, emotive. Humans are, and politics must be, but they were always, I think, respectful. They drew the heat from what were, in Ireland, some of the most sensitive social issues of the day, and they converted it to light. The Assembly served to strengthen democratic engagement, bolster trust, and improve public policy. They were not, and they never can or will be, a panacea for democratic decline, but used right, they can be part of a toolkit for democratic revival. That's one of the reasons I'm so proud that through Art and others, Ireland has been able to share its experience across the Council of Europe. And I will say a special thanks to him because he's joining us today in the middle of a presidential election in Ireland, which is a testament to his particular vision and integrity and desire to engage here. It's also why I'm so pleased that through Eva and her team at DemNet, Polgarmester Chosik and Polgarmester Orsi have used citizens' assemblies to empower their own constituents. All politics is local. Tip O'Neill, the Irish-American House Speaker, once said, and I should say that my family and I are happy residents of Budapest 2nd District, which Mayor Orsi leads. Mindannyi Tio de Legjoboton, Polgarmester. I'm also deeply grateful to him and to Mayor Chosik for joining us this morning. A quick cousin too to my colleague Nargiza, who always works hard, but worked especially hard in organising today's programme, and above all to Ballant and his brilliant colleagues here at the Council of Europe's Youth Centre, a fabulous building and space, and our gracious partners and hosts. Friends, finally, I first met Art in Strasbourg during Ireland's term as chair of the Council of Europe's Committee of Ministers, which I helped direct from Dublin. In that role, I had to explain very often to friends, to family, to our public, sometimes even to politicians, I'll attest, what the Council of Europe was, how it was distinct from the Council of the EU, despite having the same flag and the same anthem, and why it mattered. And very simply, it boiled down to this. The Council of Europe, for me, is the conscience of Europe. And today, more than ever, I think, our continent needs and should stay true to its conscience. So thank you all for joining this morning. Thank you in particular to Art for travelling and to Balin for organising, and I hope and expect it's going to be a wonderful exchange. Cousin Sepan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you very much, Balint, for these really inspiring opening words, deep thoughts. I mean, reminding us also of the challenges, the enormous challenges the world is facing at the moment. And now we are having this panel on deliberative democracy. And I think really we should see this new innovative form of democracy as one of the way forwards to face these challenges that you also pointed out. Thank you very much for inviting me for moderating this panel. My name is Cornelia Perle. I am a former senior policy advisor from Council of Europe, where I was working especially on participatory and deliberative democracy to promote it in the Council of Europe member states. And this is also within this position where I connected very closely with Eva Burdos from Demnet and with Arthur Leary. And I had the pleasure, I did not have the pleasure yet to meet the mayors, but I was informed and also aware of the processes going on in the respective municipalities. It is really a pleasure for me to be here also moderating this panel, because I feel like coming back after 2 years. We were organizing within Council of Europe a school on participatory democracy, and it was then when I have first met with Eva Burdos, and when I have visited the first citizen assembly myself in Budapest. It was not the first one in Budapest, but for me the first opportunity to visit a citizen assembly in the back then 11th district. And so it is really very nice to come back and sit here again and connect somehow to the process that we have started 2 years ago. Thank you very much, Balint, for inviting me. And I'm especially honored to moderate this panel, this event hosted by Ireland, by the Irish embassy, because as we would say in the deliberative global community, Ireland is kind of the rock star when it comes to the rock star among the countries when it comes to deliberative democracy. And the ambassador, you have already really pointed out very nicely and in detail the important role of Ireland to bring the format of citizen assemblies forward. So thanks a lot for this opportunity. Welcome, dear excellencies. Welcome, former colleagues, representatives from civil society organizations. I also would like to welcome the participants who are joining online. We don't see them, but I guess you are seeing us. So very welcome to all of you, and above all, of course, welcome to our panelists. Art O'Leary, we heard already, head of the Independent Electoral Commission of Ireland. And here I also want to say, and we discussed it several times, it's not only the body who manages and oversees elections, but also democratic matters. So it's a little bit a broader body, and I think this is very important. It's not only about election, and this is also the connection to deliberative and participatory democracy. Very welcome to Mr. Laszlo Csöszik, the mayor of Earth since 2019. And so we will see a little bit later a video. We would like to share a short video also from your municipality, where we see what a beautiful place you have to manage and what you are doing with it. Also very welcome to Mayor Györgyi Örsi, mayor of the 2nd district of Budapest. And I'm very excited also to have you on the panel, because you are in the midst of a citizen assembly process, a very specific one. We will hear that a little bit later. And so very welcome, and thank you for taking the time. And last but not least, Very welcome to Eva Berdos, Executive Director of DemNet, a very dear friend and colleague also. And DemNet and Eva in particular, very active in promoting participatory deliberative democracy, not only promoting, but actually practically supporting the implementation of deliberative processes of citizen assemblies, and not only in Hungary, but also in international context. And I was very lucky to work with Eva a couple, I think 2 years ago, to organize the first citizen assemblies in Ukraine, and this one under really challenging context of war condition. So very welcome, Eva, and I will look very forward to hear your experience. Before we go to the panel, just very quickly the explanation what will be the flow of the morning. So we will have a very short introduction, and I think I will skip mine because Balint has already very well explained the deliberative democracy citizen assembly format, but we will have a short, as I said, video from Earth, just also to see the perception of citizen assemblies from the view of citizens who have actually gone through such a process. Then we will have a first round of inputs from our panelists, more general on citizen assemblies, deliberative democracy. After that, we will have the chance of answers and questions. And here I would like to encourage our online participants. If you have questions, please make them in the chat, and we will make sure we will try and make sure to pick them up then during the discussion. And then there will be a second round of questions and contributions from the panelists, and there we would really like to focus on the youth topic. So really to see how the youth participation, how deliberative democracy is relevant to youth participation and vice versa. And then there will be another round of questions, and then there will be the possibility in a reception where we can continue to discuss in a more informal way bilaterally. With that, I would like to start, I think. As I said, I prepared a short introduction on the topic still. I can skip most of it. The title of the discussion is Strengthening Democratic Resilience Through Youth Participation and Deliberative Democracy. My thought was that it's clear when we talk about what we are talking about, strengthening democratic resilience. It's also clear mostly what we mean by youth participation. I just wanted to stress the point. What do we mean when we talk about deliberative democracy and citizen assemblies? And through the years working in Council of Europe on this topic, I have encountered several times the situation that people would talk about citizen assembly like citizen councils, advisory boards, in permanent citizen assemblies advising to governments or municipalities. So just to remind that we are talking about citizen assemblies, deliberative processes as temporarily set up bodies, which is very important. It's not a permanent body of citizens, it's a temporarily set up body of randomly selected citizens, which is also very important to stress. So these are not nominated by somebody, they are not appointed ones, these are not the usual suspected which are always active when it comes to a topic. There are really randomly selected citizens from completely diverse backgrounds, and the selection process is really meant and designed to ensure that this is a socio-demographic reflection. It's the reflection of the socio-demographic composition of a society. Also very important, we are not talking about consultation process or focus groups. We are really talking about a process where citizens are invited during a row of several in-person meetings, and they are invited first to learn about the topic. So they are not people who know already, who are already committed and engaged in a certain topic. They might come out of a context, they have no idea, no deeper information. So they all go through a joint learning process in a learning phase, and then they have the possibility through facilitated discussions, and that's also a very important other characteristic of the citizen assemblies, to have professionally qualified facilitators who guide the participants, the citizens, through these discussions to make sure that not one or the other participant is louder, stronger, and convinces the others, but really to make sure that all citizens have a voice, can express their doubts, their opinion, and bring their input. So it's very important that we are talking about the professional facilitated process. And I think, as also the ambassador, you already stressed the point, and also Balint, the whole exercise is worthless as long it is not then really going into a follow-up. If there isn't then really the results, the recommendations, whatever is the outcome of this process, is really, it's crucial that there is a follow-up then by the commissioning body. And this is also a very important differentiation of a consultation process or of a focus group, where politicians or institutions hear and listen to the citizens, but there it is just like an input to be taken. And when we talk about citizens' assemblies, we really talk about a process which is structured and which really results then in an outcome that should be implemented by politicians, institutions, governments, mayors. I think with this, I have more or less made clear what we are talking about, and we will have a lot of practical input now. Before we start the discussion, I would like to invite my colleagues from Technics to show now a short video on the citizen assembly process in Earth in 2019, where we can also see and have the voice of citizens who have gone through such a process, and how did they perceive it, and what did it meant to them. So enjoy the warm-up to the discussion.
Én imádom ezt a várost úgy, ahogy van.
Születésem óta 46 éve itt élek.
Itt lakik a családom, barátaim, itt nőttem föl, itt játszottunk nagyon sokat.
Azon gondolkoztam, hogy hogyan változtathatnék egy kicsit is bármin, és amint hazamentem, kaptam egy levelet a polgármesteri hivatalból.
Amikor a polgármester úr kiírta, hogy fognak küldeni, meghívott, valahogy éreztem azt, hogy fognak küldeni.
Amikor a meghívót megkaptam, akkor az volt az érzésem, hogy végre valamit én is tehetek, vagy beleszólhatok a Érd közösségi életébe.
Egész Érd itt képviselteti magát a közösségi gyűlésen, és talán meghallgatják a hétköznapi emberek problémáit, és ebből építkezve egy olyan élhető várost fog a városvezetés teremteni, ami mindenkinek használja válik.
Nagyon kíváncsi voltam más embereknek, a városrészeknek, hogy milyen problémáik vannak.
A közösségi gyűlésnek, illetve a szakértői előadásoknak is köszönhetően én is egy kicsit jobban átlátom a problémákat.
Más szemmel néztem az utcákat.
Biztos, hogy egy másfajta gondolkodásmódot hozott ki abból, hogy mi látjuk a problémákat, de hogy nem biztos, hogy ez a megoldás, amit idáig úgy gondoltunk, hogy megoldás.
Itt nem csak panaszkodnak az emberek és a hibákat mondják, hanem ötleteket adnak.
Úgy érzem, hogy elindult egyfajta folyamat, egyfajta párbeszéd az önkormányzat és a hétköznapi civil emberek között, amit nem szabad abba hagyni, ezt folyamatosan szinten kell tartani, úgy, hogy esetleg a környezetünket még jobban bevonva előre vigyük a település fejlődését.
Remélem, hogy amiket itt megszavazunk, azok be fognak teljesülni, ha nem is rövid időn belül, de hogy hosszabb távon ez valami pozitivitást hoz Érd város lakóinak.
Szerintem itt fantasztikus csapat kovácsolódott itt össze a 3 nap alatt. Szerintem ezt a későbbiekben is folytatni kellene, hogy alakítsuk Érdet élhetőbbé.
Van, akivel telefonszámot is cseréltünk.
A legfontosabb számomra az lenne, hogyha ez az egész nem érne itt ma véget, hanem hogyha ezt valahogy folytatni lehetne.
Azt üzenném a
az érdieknek, hogy tartsunk össze, legyen közös cél, és próbáljuk a városunkat élhetőbbé, lakhatóbbá tenni, szerethetőbbé. Legyen egy olyan motiváció, olyan visszatartó ereje Érd városának, ami által az emberek szeretnek itt lakni.
So thank you very much to Eva and yes, it deserves an applause. To Eva and Mayor of Earth to provide us also this video, and I think it's really nice. We are talking so dryly on concepts and experience, but see it happening in an environment. How is it happening? I think it's really a very nice starting point. But now back to Ireland. That was the Hungarian example. Now back to Ireland. Art. Very welcome again. You were one of the first, you designed the first citizen assembly in Ireland back then in 2012 with this huge success and resulting then in a number of successful constitutional referendums. You will talk about that later. You were also more recently in charge of organizing citizen assemblies on the crisis on biodiversity loss and local government structures in Ireland, capital city. And I also want to add on a more personal level, you are, let's say, in the global deliberative community, also known as one of the most convincing, one of the most accessible, and one of the most enthusiastic promoters of the citizen assemblies idea. Of course, not without lacking the necessary critical reflection, but I think you are really incredible colleague in this field to all of us, because you are really the one who convinces people with the idea. Can you tell us more about your experience from Ireland with citizen assemblies? What are the key impacts that you observed in the different processes? And what are the benefits to the society that you can say about the Irish society? But also, what challenges did you encounter? Art, welcome.
Thank you, Neela.
Make sure to switch on.
I'm on. Yeah. My family will be astonished to hear that I'm a convincing kind of individual, because I can't even convince my kids to go to bed on time. You know, so it's such a wonderful pleasure to be here. It's my first time in Budapest, and Mila Buichas, many thanks to the ambassador and to Balint for the kind invitation to spend some time with you. I love speaking to young people and the diplomatic corps in particular about this, because you are the future. Democratic innovation is something that you are probably more open to than some others in the institutional framework. So I'm happy to share Ireland's experience with you. About 2011, Ireland had a general election after the financial crisis. We were more impacted by the financial crisis than most of the countries on earth, and we lost our sovereignty and financial sovereignty, and we lost a lot of our own dignity and self-respect as a nation. And we had an election where we elected a brand new government on the basis that the old ways of working weren't applicable anymore. We had to do things differently. We had to approach making decisions and developing policy in a much more different way from the other end of the telescope. And I got a late night phone call. I was at home watching reruns of The West Wing at the time, and 11 o'clock and my phone rang, and I nervously answered it, because I don't know about you, but nobody rings me at 11 o'clock at night to say they're having a good day, you know. So it was our Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister said, Art, I have a job for you. And I said, well, this will be a very short conversation, Prime Minister, because I already have a job, thank you. And he said, no, we have this thing in our program for government. It's never, ever going to work. but we promised we would do it. And we were a government that was elected to start fulfilling all of our promises. And I said, well, what is this thing? He said, it's called a constitutional convention. Never heard of it. Tell me about it. He said, we're going to put 100 people, most of them randomly selected and representative of Irish society, into a room, and we're going to ask them a whole pile of really hard questions. And then when they give us the answers, then we're going to see what we can do about it. And I said, you're absolutely right. That's never, ever going to work. You know, and anyway, we spoke for an hour or so about this new body. And at the end of it, I said, well, let me see if I have you straight, Prime Minister. As long as I don't spend any money or kill anybody, I can do whatever I like with this bunch of people. And he said, I knew you were the fella for me, you know. So we went on a journey for a year. We designed a body which brought randomly selected individuals together with politicians to have a look at some really, really contentious issues for Irish people. And as Neela said, it has led to some really transformational changes in Irish society. We introduced marriage equality into our constitution. We introduced abortion into our constitution. Holy Catholic Ireland had a conversation, and at the end of it, we decided that women's reproductive health and reproductive rights should go into our conversation. It became a forum where some of our most intractable political problems could be discussed with, in a respectful way. We have very, very few rules about our Citizens' Assembly, but the one inviolable rule is respect. We've got zero tolerance for conflict. We don't allow conflict in the room. Everybody has to understand that they can walk into this room and express an opinion and be respected for it. There have been occasions where we've asked people to, listen, leave the room, go walk around the block and come back in when you've cooled down a little bit, because we allow everybody to express an opinion in complete safety. So there's something going on in the world right now, you know, in the increasingly political systems are looking for ways for citizens to become much more involved in decision-making and policy development. And citizens themselves are looking to have a greater say in how decisions are made that impact them. So in the last 2.5 years, this is country number 82 in which I have spoken about Ireland's experience with citizens' assemblies. You know, it's an extraordinary thing. You know, I'm being a shy and retiring individual. I don't go around knocking on people's doors saying, please let me come and talk about it. They come and ask Ireland because Ireland is seen as somebody who has successfully done this. And I'm always very careful not to lecture people. This is how you do it, and this is the way you must do it. I simply say, we had some problems. We used citizens' assemblies to help us fix them. You know, so just as an introduction, Neela asked me the kind of challenges that we faced. And in every single country in which I have spoken, the same two problems come up, the same two challenges for people who don't believe in citizens' assemblies. One, we already have a citizens' assembly. It's called a parliament. You know, so why do we need a group of unelected, randomly selected, no-hopers in a room with no expertise to help us to do a job that we elect politicians to do? And the simple answer to this is that citizens' assemblies are not a threat to the political system. They're a support. For 90 of the last 100 years of Ireland's existence, we've developed policy and made decisions using 3 methods, basically. We elect politicians with manifestos. Here's what we're going to do when we get into government, and that sounds great. Off you go. There are people like me and like the ambassador, mostly men in grey suits, who provide advice. Civil servants and ministers and governments listen to the lads in grey suits and comb-overs. And thirdly, governments have always engaged with stakeholders. So when we're looking at changes to taxation issues, we talk to finance industry specialists. Transport issues, we talk to transport companies. Energy issues, we talk to energy companies. And that's the way it has always been. All we have done with the Citizens' Assembly is to add a fourth leg to this three-legged stool. We've added a citizen's opinion as well as all the other opinions as well, to try and enrich and support the decision-making process. The second challenge that we always face is people speaking pejoratively about it, saying, listen, this is just a big focus group. And there's one big difference between a focus group and a citizens' assembly. In that, with a focus group, it's normally a polling company will put a pile of people in a room and they'll ask them questions. What's your favorite breakfast cereal? Who's your favorite political party leader? Who does your house insurance and your car insurance? What do you think the government should do about climate change, abortion, marriage equality, and all of these things? And the citizens in the room, they give their opinions. And they say, well, here's my favorite political party leader, here's what I think they should do. And then polling companies release all of this information as, here's what the people of Ireland think about all of these things. With the Citizens' Assembly, we put a much larger group of people into a room and we fill them with information. We make them experts in all of these subjects that they've been asked to consider. And at the end of that process, then we ask them, what do you think the government should do about abortion, or marriage equality, or climate change, or illegal drug use, or a directly elected mayor in our capital city in Dublin? So it is an informed and a really well-informed view that goes back to Parliament. A couple of, you're indeed fortunate. I've had this conversation that lasted 2 days, but I know I only have a few minutes here this morning, but I'll briefly perhaps talk about some of the highlights, or some of the essential ingredients for a Citizens' Assembly in our experience. One is that the room has to be representative of the Irish people. Every single person in Ireland should be able to look into this room of 100 people and see themselves there. And if they can't see a picture exactly of themselves, they have to see their opinion represented there. And I think that's really, really important. And we invest so much time and energy in this. And this is something that Ava would have done here as well, because it's the key to everything. Some of this stuff is very easy. Age, region, and gender is very simple. We've got 51 women, 49 men. We've got 28 people from our capital city in Dublin, and we've got 12 people between the age of 18 and 24. But we delve much, much deeper. We've got 4 farmers in the room, because 4% of our population are farmers. We've got 11 people with a disability. We've got 17 people who weren't born in Ireland. And slowly but surely, we build a picture of what Ireland in one room might look like. So when you ask the question, the chances are that you're going to get a representative view. On the issue of abortion, our citizens made recommendations which went way, way beyond what the government was expecting. Very radical, very liberal, and they voted 67 to 33 in favor of this new regime of abortion, which they felt the government should legislate for. Government and the media were not impressed. They said, this will never work. The Irish people will never go for this. When the question was put to a referendum of the Irish people, the result was 66-34. Think about that. 67-33, 66-34. So that proves 2 things. One, that room was perfectly representative of the Irish people, and was able to represent the views once they had heard all of the basic information. And secondly, and perhaps more importantly for this audience, the Irish people were much more sophisticated and much more nuanced in their thinking on this issue than the political system gave them credit for. Politicians, particularly in Ireland, they like to think that they are intimately aware of the way that their constituents think about everything. That's not always the case, so this was an example of that. The second issue, and I'm okay for time? Yeah, okay.
Because there will be a second round.
Yeah,
so
all right.
there is
Not every issue is suitable for a citizens' assembly. You know, as you can imagine, we found solutions to some of the most intractable political problems. So there was a political feeling then, wow, we've discovered something that can solve all of our problems. That's not always the case. In the current climate, would you ask a citizens' assembly to look at nuclear power as an energy source? Perhaps, you know. Would you ask a citizens' assembly to design new nuclear power station? Probably not. You know, some things are best left to experts. The third thing, outcomes. Outcomes are really, really important, and it's something that we're particularly good at. When we walk into a citizens' assembly to introduce the 100 people to this new way of working, we know exactly what's going to happen when they make recommendations. The Parliament sets up a special committee to look at the recommendations, and then the government formally responds to them. You know, many, many of the citizens' assemblies which failed all over the world failed because the political system didn't understand what it had to do with the recommendation. These reports sat on shelves, you know, so very important that you know what happens at the end before you even begin. And finally, you'll be relieved to hear, political leadership is so important here. You know, that this was led by our Prime Minister, you know, and in our situation, if something is a priority for the Prime Minister, then it's a priority for everybody. And we were established by our Parliament as independent, so I turned up at the Prime Minister's front door with a wheelbarrow and said, fill that with cash, please. And then when I got the money, I said, I'll see you all in a year, I'll be back. We went off and independently did our work, and that's so important that this happens independently without recourse to government. You know, if I want your help, I'll ask for it, but I never will. You know, it's really, really important that the citizens themselves get to decide the agenda, decide the work program, and make recommendations without any input, intimidation, or advocacy from government figures, you know, because there's something very empowering, and I'll stand for this, just for impact. You know, on the first day of a citizens' assembly, I stand on a stage like this, there's 100 people in the room, and they know why they're there, they kind of have an idea why they're there, but they don't know how it's going to work. And all we say is, the government has a problem with biodiversity loss, the crisis of biodiversity loss. They have no idea how to solve it. Will you please come and help us work it out? And that's the essence of a citizens' assembly. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Art.
Yes,
You're
sorry.
always worried about the time, but I think your presentation is always so captivating and important, so we always give you a couple of minutes more. It happens.
Yeah, you're very kind.
But I also I think you made, I can make a perfect bridge, because you stopped with your last point about the importance of the political buy-in, to have the political leaders on board. Now we switch from Ireland in a room to Earth in a room. And so from, let's say, national level process to a municipal level process. And we have the political leader here. So we have a different perspective on the process, locally and from the perspective of the mayor. You were, in your first term as mayor of the municipality of Orth, co-organizing the citizen assembly with Demnet, with Eva Berdos also, in spring 22. And it was the third town in Hungary to convene a citizen assembly. So you must be very proud, congratulations. And now we are really curious, how did you first come across the concept of citizen assemblies? And what was your initial reaction to it? And looking back, same as I asked Art, what are the lessons learned? What challenges did you encounter? And what was the most surprising in the process for you? Most surprising aspects. Very welcome.
Okay.
Mr. Laszlo.
Yeah.
Csotik.
Csotik, yeah. It's right pronunciation. Good morning and greetings to everyone. It is our big pleasure to be here with you. And first of all, I would like to apologize for not using English. You know, a politician always wants to be very dynamic and eloquent, and I don't have enough time to prepare for this event. I think it's gonna be more convenient for you. Okay, let's switch to Hungary. Köszöntök mindenkit tehát. Arra gondoltam, az elején mondok pár szót a városunkról, Érdről, hogy mindenki képben legyen. Érd jelen pillanatban
And Érd is the 10th biggest town after Budapest in Hungary. This is a very big town after Budapest, and if you look at the Guinness Book, for example, the 1978 year, you will see our town as our city. Érd is the biggest village in Budapest. Back then there was 40,000 people, now it's 80,000 in Hungary. I would like to thank Demnet and all the providers who gave us the possibility to take part in the assemblies. And actually, our mayor was quite skeptical at the first time. And I would really like to admit that first I was quite unsure. I was unsure because when we first thought about this process was the first time when all our funds were decreasing at the municipalities, and we knew that we couldn't give so much result for our citizens. We had utilities, financial crisis. That's why I tried to be more secure about this topic, and we wanted to see how the second citizen assembly will result. And I was in good terms with Pál Veres from the municipality of Miskolc. He told me that this was actually a great idea, and in Miskolc, in this town in Hungary, they could solve many problems by this assembly. For us, it was quite a long of a process because we wanted to focus on this assembly in legal and financial way that it will blossom later. Of course, we really had to focus on a very important process, and we were actually trying to select 50 people out of 10,000 candidates. So we had to randomly pick them. And I had to admit there and then that I had to just focus on the target and not to my insecurities, because everything went great. We had an amazing stuff. We had a mere luck with everything because we randomly selected people. You could see who were there, and they were really happy to take part in this process. We soon realized that this citizen assembly's biggest role is to prepare actually the people who come here, and we have to teach them, we have to prepare them for making decisions. So it doesn't really go in a way that we just invite 50 random people that should we have a new parking a lot. So on this citizen assembly, first, we prepared these citizens. They were normal citizens, not experts. They were engineers, random workers. So first, they got a preparation, and they had an insight about economical, financial, environmental issues. After that, after the process, we saw how it manifested in this process. And there were really, really important remarks that we decision makers can actually live together. So what was the biggest result of this citizen assembly? First of all the representative mayors, deputy mayors, everybody made it easier for everyone to understand that it's important to look at the people. We have to include people for the decision making, because if we prepare them after that, we are also secured and supported. There are a lot of different kinds of circumstances, aspects that we actually have never thought about, and people can draw attention to these problems. It's very important also to look at the most painful, sorrowful decisions. For example, one of the most important results was that people said that in Erd we had to implement paying parking. And before that, of course, for mayors, that was a death sentence to try and introduce paid parking. Because as how we actually grew our citizens from 40 to 80,000 people, people said that you should be actually full of courage, and you should start introducing parking that you actually have to pay for, because it can provide us with a system in the town, and it's a huge chaos. I want to admit we haven't introduced yet, but in words we are already advocated, and we have already tried to initiate the process, and that without the citizens' assembly we couldn't have done it, and we wouldn't have been able to actually just be brave enough to do that, and people helped us a lot in that matter. What is also really important, that a future of a town is made together, and we have to actually face that we are a really big town after Budapest, and 2/3 of the people get in the car in the morning, go to Budapest, commute, and then come home after rush hours.
Thank you.
So we are a nation of commuters. Everyone came to Erd to get the feeling of suburbia, the green parts of the city. They were looking for these characters. However, the level of urbanization is so weak that we started to seek answers for those questions. Either we should be conservatives and keep this suburban feeling, or shall we be open to urbanization, for example, as our town center, which is not so eloquent, could include high-tech buildings which are extremely big or not. We were given great help in these issues, and this is the main way how the design of the city was created. And I have to say that if there is a regulation of law which is important for a municipality, is the local construction law. And this law includes whether we can have blocks of buildings, higher buildings, or we should follow in a conservative way, so that one property shall include one building with a garden. And in this question, people were quite committed to look for the opportunity of new challenges, new ways, and we were encouraged to take some steps, and we are going to accept this new city design plan, and it is an incredible big document. However, I believe we could use it as some kind of example. I also have an example, Tallahassee in Texas, which is really similar to Erd. However, its downtown is a really pulsing part. It has buildings which has 25-30 levels, floors. So this was decided by our citizens. And just to have a short story, you could see a person with gray hair in the video, and he was so encouraged that he started to become involved in politics, and he unfortunately is not part of the party that I prefer. However, we still work together. And it was extremely great to see that randomly selected people could be involved in these assemblies. We also have communal financing projects, and during the meantime, I was thinking how we could keep this extremely great team, how we could use the results of the Citizens' Assembly in the future. And as you know, as we have experienced the financial crisis, municipalities had to introduce really strict measures. But before having introduced these measures, I first went to the Citizens' Assembly, and they were actually quite glad that we didn't let them go, and we are still greatly interested in these values, opinions. And it was extremely useful that during the financial crisis we had the possibility to ask the citizens whether we should close up one institution, how long this closing should take, what shall we do with our playgrounds, how long we should have the curfew, and we had some recommendations that we actually used. However, the meetings are not regular. However, before big events, we still gather these 50 people. It actually means 1 or 2 occasions per year in the last 2 or 3 years. However, we had the basic point as our democracy in Ért. Of course, I'm also considering online questionnaires, votings, which are a great substitution for really expensive referendums. We are also quite active on social media. When we are tagged, when we receive an email, a message, when we get a comment, we are there. We are taking actions, we are taking steps, and we are helping people. I believe it's crucial if someone would like to be a great mayor and represent their democracy. I would like to have a stop here, and as a conclusion, I just want to mention that this forum, this assembly is a really great way for every municipality. And second of all, you young people, I actually started to be a politician when I was at the age of 26. So I would like just to mention to you that you are needed. You should get into politics, and municipalities and local authorities are in a really great need of young people. I believe that the all-parliamentarian democracy has this institutional system where you could still bloom and you could maybe have bigger roles in the future. Thank you very much.
We will come to this part of the youth participation in the second round, so very good that you made already this comment to our young participants. Thank you very much for also reminding some very banal truths, but a politician needs courage to take decisions, and often there are unpopular decisions to take, and citizens' assemblies exactly provide also backup for these kind of processes when unpopular decisions have to be taken. And also thank you for reminding us that citizen assembly, this process, has not only an effect in the immediate process and the outcome of the recommendation, but it really changes also the perception, the culture of citizens, so they get more actively involved in the follow-up. Not all of them, but there is this potential. Thank you very much. Again, another example of, in this case, the Budapest 2nd district in one room, if to take the words of Art. Very welcome, Mayor György Örsi. As I said in the beginning, you are at the moment actively organizing, involved in a citizen assembly process, women citizen assembly, so we will hear more of that. And I also was reading in the invitation letter that your political program very much focuses on environment and environmental issue and improving the district. And these are exactly topics predestined for citizen assembly, how to engage citizens in developing proposals to these topics. So my question to you again, to the Women Assembly. So why did you choose this topic? How did this come? And how did the preparation go? Because now you started this weekend, I think was the first session. And what can you already share about the process after the first meeting now this weekend? Very welcome.
Yes.
The floor is yours.
Thank you for the invitation. I will also speak in Hungarian. But first of all, I'm sorry that I don't have such a great movie of my town as Mr. Laszlo, but believe me, if the European Youth Centre and the ambassador of Ireland choose the second district to live, it's a great place. And now you are in the second district, so you can take a walk and realize how beautiful it is. So, onnan jött az ötlet, hogy mi mindig is nagyon-nagyon
So the idea came from the point that we were really interested in people's ideas. When we got into the leading position, we decided that we wanted to act upon the decision of its citizens. We have 60, 70 occasions where we involve the citizens. We have hearings, community events. So I assume we were quite pioneers regarding involving the community to our decision making. So we decided to make decisions based on their decisions. Besides environmental issues and the development of our town or city or part, we also focus on gender equality, and this is one of our biggest targets. We are seeking for advice how we can move on this topic as a local municipality. I always say as an example that here in Budapest, but I assume in Érd as well, only 10% of the streets are named after women. The remaining 90 are made based on men. If we do not calculate those street names, which are not actual names, this figure is only 7%. So politicians do not actually take actions to work on these inequalities. There are only just a few examples for that. As we have just a few examples for real democratic steps as well. So these focus groups are designed not only that poll companies are gathering people and ask some questions. And in Hungary, the situation is quite adverse because the government sends out like 4.5 million letters where are designed questions. For example, would you like everything to be better? Or shall we open the borders that terrorists come into Hungary and they just blow up everything? So basically, you could see how citizens are involved. Of course, this is an exaggerated example. However, you could have a picture what kind of directed questions are included in these letters sent out by the government. So these assemblies are questioned directly by the people. So, for example, we designed a park and we just asked the citizens, do you like it or not? Or before we create a park, or we just redesign the transportation system. We invite those who are living in the area or outside of the area, and they could have a voice whether they like it or not. Of course, there are bad examples. For example, 23 people decide A and 23 people decide B, and nothing can be done in this issue. However, there are great ideas, for example, regarding cultural questions as well. But we realized in these assemblies, we just realized that two social groups are less represented in these assemblies than usually these two groups are represented in the community, in the society, and these are the groups of women and the youth. So if I ask them, what shall we do in an area where we would like to have a park, we have discussion for 3 or 4 years, and someone who is not young just realizes that there is no young people here, so we should include someone who is not only who is disabled or who would like to have a playground, but we should also include those who are young. And when we just have the idea that we should include some young person, they just have the idea to have a smart bench. A smart bench is not used by young because they don't need Wi-Fi, they don't need charging. So we don't have young people in the communities, in the assemblies, to have a word that they don't want a smart bench. We also realize that women are not involved in these assemblies. We try to change our schedule or timing, however, for no avail. And when we were reached out by Demeter, we realized that we actually need their support. So we were really in love in this project because we could experience that it is working. And we could also realize that it has a great history in Western Europe and in more in more developed countries, and has values which just cannot be highlighted enough. And what we have to highlight, that bureaucracy and this kind of administrative way of thinking is quite strength. And I'm really grateful for Eva that they were waiting for the time until we could change our system in order to not to have this bureaucratic way of thinking, but after the previous elections, we created an office, and in this 2.5 years of thinking, we could actually start this first assembly for women.
We don't really tell them what they should talk about. We never give them first the impression that they have to jury everything. We are actually interested how they are representative and how actually their thoughts are represented. This is a very great process because we just wanted to leave them with this decision, and we thought that Demnant are the specialist, and this is for women because they don't really have that much voice as we wanted them to. And if they know what they want, and when we think about what women want and what they deserve, normally these decisions are made by men. For example, if we think about parking places, women should have stereotypical questions like having mothers bigger park places for them, or should they have installed toilets at the playgrounds. So there were a lot of suggestions and ideas because we just wanted to break through from this bubble, from the bubble that we live in. That's why we are really optimistic, and I think it's very important what kind of topics we have, not just topics that are centered around women. And it's not a secret that, for example, not to have any more smart benches in Budapest, we need a specific citizen assembly that I think we haven't talked to Eva yet, but of course we want you to represent us. And after that we are going to start the legal process that we would like to include the youth, because the youth is actually the interest in politics is really, really low here, and in local politics, the interest is really, really low among youth. That's why youth councils and young people don't represent themselves in this sphere.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting, and I think it's really very exciting to hear such a very actual information of a process ongoing now. I just also to remind again, this Women Assembly is the first ever Women Assembly, a citizen assembly focusing on the topic of women and with women. So this is a very specific format, and there is a lot of international interest also in this exercise and in this experience, and we are really looking forward to see what will be the outcome and how it goes. Now this is also the bridge to the international part again of our panel. And when we started in the morning, I had the opportunity to get to know the ambassador from Belgium and the representative from Germany. So there are many really excellent examples also in other countries. Germany, we talked about the Forum Against Fake. Belgium, you have a long tradition also on deliberative democracy. Switzerland, there is a youth assembly ongoing, or it's already finalized, sorry. So there is experience in the international level. And one of the experts on international level is Eva Berdos from Demnet. As I said, you have been working since 2 decades now to promote not only so participatory and deliberative democracy in not only in Hungary but in Europe, in Eastern Europe a lot. So can you tell us a little bit about your experience on this international level and also what you consider important? I mean, we have heard, for example, Ireland, local level, national level, but I think you might be able to tell us also a little bit what is important to further develop this format of deliberative democracy. What do we have to take into account to make it really strong and to make sure that the impact is what we intend or what the organizers intend, and that it doesn't backfire and somehow turn to be counterproductive. Eva, we are looking very forward to hear from you, your experience.
Köszönöm szépen, köszönöm Néla.
Thank you so much, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here, and thank you for the Council of Europe to organize this event, and thank you so much for the embassy, ambassador, and Berlin to organize this event. It's very important. Art actually started his speech with a personal story, so this is what I'm going to do. I was 8 years old at the time of the regime change. I really remember on that day when I was walking home with my mother, and she said that this way will be in the history books and everything will be different. And I was talking to my parents a lot at home about politics, and I'm really happy that at home I could actually learn that democracy actually is true if it's for all of us. And the last 30-35 years, a lot of things happened, a lot of shocking, surprising data we can see, and we made a survey 2 years ago how Hungarians look at deliberative democracy and how much they trust each other, how they trust the institutions, and we had shocking results. And I refuse to give up my thoughts and my beliefs in people. So when 7-8 years ago, deliberative democracy as a concept I met my first thought is that yes, this is maybe this could be actually the road for us. This could be the healing process for all those challenges that we have been facing. And for example, for pessimism, for polarism, and I think that this might actually help on the long run. So when in 2020 we had the opportunity to use with the capital city how to use the deliberative democracy as a concept, then I was super excited, and I have to admit that I did not believe that this could actually work here in Hungary, and I actually feared that DemNet will fail during the process. But it was not the case, and it's very important to say that we could also organize a lot of deliberative democracy processes and meetings, and thank you so much that they were actually open for these concepts. Thank you for the mayors here. So how does this actually work in real life, especially in the Eastern European, the Central Eastern European region, because we don't really have those traditions like the ones in Western Europe. And when we look at the traditions, we can see that in Western Europe, we could see the citizens' assemblies, majority actually took place in Western Europe. Actually, I fear that if something will not happen, then I think deliberative democracy will fail if democracy is actually the same as democracy. In Eastern Europe, we wouldn't have as much chance to have it in our local and international sphere as well, and so people can learn this process and how people could actually get closer to each other, and the representatives and the political leaders as well. When we first started to work with this method and in the Central Eastern European partners, we thought and we saw that this actually can work here as well in this region. So when we do it well, then it cannot be true that this methodology cannot be built in our decision-making processes here in this region, in Hungary also. And I'm very happy and grateful to tell you that we also had the opportunity to work together with EBES from Albania, and we really started to work together, and we can see that it actually works, and also it can actually work in a place which is full with challenges. Let's just think about Ukraine for a second, where people in Ukraine actually proved how big of a need they have for dialogues, for discussions, for agreeing with each other. Because I think for these processes, what we have actually learned from is that people want normalcy, and dialogues should be normal to everyone. So that's why I'm really, really happy that this methodology actually works in real life, and I can see in the big picture that we can use it. Although we have to also pay attention how we use it, because the concept of democracy is also quite fragile. So that's why how institutions, processes have to be taken into consideration, because there is actually a threat that people can just take the opportunity and misuse this concept, this marvelous concept, if we don't do it well. That's why it's very important is that if a decision-making person, a specialist, or an NGO want to use the process, they really have to use the process well, and they have to keep the normal guidances around deliberative democracy that was actually made by OECD. And then we can see that people's fate will not be broken in the hand of democracy, because as I said, the possibility is given, but if we fail to implement it well, then it might result in a bigger disillusionment other than that. And of course, I don't want to put a pressure on the mayors, but the other threat of the process is, other than misusing them, is that when the decision makers ignore the results Of course, if we ignore the results, then the representative will feel that, why did I sit there in that room for days? I put all my energy and effect for my town, for my people, for my country, if there aren't any results. So that's why, as we can see on the Irish example as well, that sometimes we have to wait years for the results to be shown. It's very important to wait for these years to come, but I think it's really, really important that after a citizen assembly, we have to follow up. We always have to follow up the results. It has to be as important as the process itself. So just in a blink of an eye, this is what I wanted to say. And I'm really curious what we will discuss about it. Thank you so much.
Sorry, is it okay? Oh, sorry. Again, thank you very much, Eva, for your valuable insights. I was saying now it's important, now it's time for the audience, please, to get engaged with our guests on the panel for your questions, comments that you might have. And also I would like to encourage again the participants who are listening and following us online to put your questions and comments in the chat. Then we can pick it up and answer and respond to them. Do I see somebody who wants to break the ice with the first question? Yes, please. Germany, right?
My name is Katja Zessen from the German Embassy. Thank you very much. Very interesting insights. And I want to pick up on something that you said, which I found interesting. So I've been here in Hungary for 3 years, and you mentioned this research that you said had quite shocking results. But then in the end, when you started doing the citizen assemblies, they were actually a success. So maybe can you give a bit more information? Why was it shocking and what was shocking? And how do you explain the results of the research and your experiences when you actually implement it? So why is there a gap? And what does this mean? So for future citizen assemblies here in Hungary.
Thank you very much for the question. I would suggest also in terms of time, let us maybe put 2 or 3 questions together and then ask the panelists to answer. Are there more questions? Yes?
Now, yes. So how do you make sure that citizens' assemblies don't become a political weapon in terms of the mayor of Erd talked about? It helps you make tough decisions, but I was thinking that it might be used as a form of propaganda or a way to convince people that these are good for them, even with an incorrect or not perfect balance of pros and cons, if you know what I mean. Yes.
Thank you very much. Very important and interesting question. There is another question in the last row.
Hi, my name is Yasmin Tigani. Thank you so much for this discussion. My question would be primarily to Mr. Oliari, but anyone is welcome to answer. You mentioned that it's very important that this body of the Citizens' Assembly is permanent. If I understood correctly, no? Okay, then I got you wrong, but I would be curious if you think it's better to choose new citizens for every assembly, or if it should stay, because I know other speakers mentioned that they stay in touch with the group. And I wonder if it might impair the representativeness of citizens assembly, that they have this experience of coming together, engaging with decision makers, and that might make these people different to the rest of the society in a way that they are no longer very representative. I hope you got my question. It was very long, sorry.
Thank you very much for this question. We can take one more and then we will start with the response, yes? I just, the colleagues, because I don't manage to read it, can we, the questions in the chat? I can turn around, then it's okay. Please go ahead.
Jó napot kívánok, én Beke Márton vagyok a...
Good morning, everyone. My name is Márton Beke, and I'm working for Hungarian NGO who works with children and the development of children. And just to be too exact with my question, that's why I'm speaking in Hungarian. So when we are dealing with the younger generations, we have the experience that we have to have great investments to include them in longer processes. Usually, youngsters are mostly involved in short-term projects, processes, and when the given process is successful or unsuccessful, they just move on something. And as myself, I am a community developer. We are working extremely hard that these children, these youngers, could be involved in a longer term, in a longer way. So my question is, what kind of solutions you have experienced either in Ukraine or Ireland or in Budapest? So what are the tools with which you could utilize to involve the younger generations for the public speaking? What are the examples that can be used to involve them in a more intense ways and to involve them in local issues?
I would suggest to use this last question then also immediately to bridge for the second round of the topic, when we will go more deeper in the question of youth participation and how make the deliberative process is relevant to the youth participation. I would suggest first, Eva, the first question went to you.
Thank you very much for the question. When we are talking about democracy, we mainly focus on trust, first of all. Trust between people, interpersonal trust, and trust into institutions by citizens. According to our research with Median 2 years ago, had the same result like the OECD Trust Index, or the research which focuses on trust. Our data shows when we asked citizens how well they trust each other, at the rate of 10, they said 3.5, and 20% of people do not trust other people at all, so they mark the 0 to 2 range. I believe it's extremely terrifying. And when we asked how possible it is that there are two people with two different opinions, can they just find one common solution? The majority of people said that it's not possible. And as we are here in the European Youth Center, only just 1/4 of the people believe that it's possible to have a consensus on questions. I believe it's extremely alarming, and we only have one way to restore, and this is communication. Art mentioned many marvelous examples how they used how they used assemblies to make people get closer together. And we also have the same experience that after the citizens' assembly, the participants answer that they have increased trust towards each other and towards also the municipalities and institutions. as these assemblies are also learning processes, they are able to learn how the Hungarian structure is built up, what are the challenges that stakeholders, decision makers have to make, and they are more sympathetic towards them. So these are only just a couple of data that I wanted to highlight. I would like to mention one other thing. We also asked them in a survey what they believe that this methodology can be used in Hungary. The majority of those asked are quite skeptical. They believe that it's not possible. We asked them why it's not possible that the civil assemblies cannot be performed in Hungary. 2/3 of those asked answered that politicians won't do it. Politicians do not have any interest in doing so. And more than half of those asked believe that they don't believe that people would sacrifice time and energy to be involved in this kind of processes. However, when we asked them if they are given an invitation, would they join? Actually, they said yes. So I don't believe the others would come, but I would be involved. So we had the idea that if the forums are provided and citizens have the possibility to be involved in a real process, they would take actions. They just only need a possibility to be provided.
Very much, Eva. I would suggest also to take the question that we got online, to combine it with the question that we had in the audience. As citizen assemblies produce recommendations, how can it be ensured that these get taken into consideration by decision makers, even if they clash with the interests of political and business elite? And I think this question, it's the other side of the same question that was mentioned, that was put by previously, how to ensure that the process is not getting a political process. And I think this question can probably very well be responded by our two mayors at the panel.
Szeretnék reagálni erre a kérdésre.
I would like to answer this question, and I would like to have some remarks regarding what have been already said. My belief was that our greatest trend is the publicity and getting to the community. Of course, if you have fair intentions. If you don't have fair intentions, it won't work. So I believe regarding municipalities, there are many progressive leaderships. I would include the two of us, whose friend is publicity. We need to have feedback, we need to have criticism, we need to be alarmed regarding those questions, those issues that we wouldn't consider. So to answer Vera Toth's question, it's not a problem that we have a counter argument. It is a great way to highlight our attention or draw our attention that something perhaps is not right. So if we say something, if we say no for a recommendation, it can be, for example, commented because we stream our meetings. I am the host of these meetings, but I always look at the comments during the streaming. And when a comment is made, I usually answer them as well. It's quite intensive because we live in the same city, we laugh together, we cry together. So the law, which was back then included in the constitution, however not now, but this law highlighted that the opportunity should be used not by the municipality but by the citizens to create their environment. And we just realized that if we ask quite direct and exact questions, from citizens, we have better results. It's really easy to do so, for example, on Facebook. This is how we made a decision on Lime scooters. We have the 9:1 ratio to accept to include Lime rollers scooters. Or we also had an online survey based on how we should name our new nursery. And those who are working in our nursery wanted to be called Kerekerdő, like round forest, and the other party wanted to have it like an elf village. However, in the end, we could find common solution. But I could also mention a great disaster as well, which I haven't been perfectly dealt with so far. It was a great issue during the summer whether we should kill mosquitoes. So if we kill mosquitoes with the deltamethrin poison, many insects also die. So for example, only just a couple of mosquitoes die out of 100 of other insects. We also had the possibility to use organic waste. However, this organic cut down means that before the mosquito is actually born, its pre-state is killed, for example, in the Danube River. And I asked the citizens if they would like to have this organic mosquito killing process on a Monday night. Shall we do it or not? Well, I have to say that 80% of people did not have any clue what to do with this question. But I just want to highlight that people should be prepared, people should be taught so that they could take a vote considering all the information they needed.
Like to comment on this question, your experience in order to ensure not to make it a political process?
A politikai vagy az gazdasági elitnek.
Well, regarding political and business elite and mainstream and being against that, I believe that we started these civil assemblies created by DemNet. They just highlighted during the organization process that we should take it as a full project and use publicity either on a long term or a short term. So we are quite afraid that Eva will be mad at us if we create a civil assembly, but we do not make the approved steps possible. So we should highlight and emphasize what the assembly decided upon. And of course, we have politicians in the public era who says something and the next year they just state the complete opposite.
Thank you very much. I would like now to go to the question that was raised about permanent versus temporary setup of citizen assembly. And here, before giving the floor to Art, because the question was to Art O'Leary, I just want to mention that there is, let's say, that we should differentiate in the discussion about establishing a permanent mechanism for citizen assemblies in terms of institutionalizing citizen assembly as a permanent instrument, and on the other hand, having a group of citizens deliberating on a certain topic, which is for each topic, for each task, newly selected. But so I think Art can give here a better and more detailed answer and on his experience.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the question. There has been a trend recently in some European cities to create permanent citizens' assemblies. You know, in Ostbelgien, in Brussels now, and in Paris, each of them have permanent citizens' assemblies where citizens sit and they develop, they bring forward ideas about issues to be resolved, etc. In Ireland, we work at the other end of that particular telescope. We set up a brand new citizens' assembly every time we have a brand new problem. So we've had 6 separate citizens' assemblies since 2012, dealing with the variety of issues that I spoke about earlier on, and that seems to work. And to my mind, our experience is that freshening the membership every time is a good thing, because over the course of 6 or 7 weekends during a year, the citizens get to know each other and they start to build relationships, and they become less able to confront in a respectful way some of the other citizens as well, you know. So part of my job is part wedding planner. So if you can imagine a big ballroom in a hotel with 12 or 13 tables with 6 or 7 citizens at each of them, at every weekend meeting, we move people around. We make sure that they're not with the same people all the time in order to be able to confront with new experiences and new perspectives, etc., but to take these friendships out of the way, because Irish people are brilliant at making friends, you know, and the first night of a weekend meeting, the Saturday when we have dinner, and then it's like the afters of an Irish wedding. You know, we stay up way too late, we drink way too much, and we get to know each other very well. So freshening it up every time is very important. Can I just briefly touch on both Marina's question and this gentleman's question about independence? Yeah.
Let me just read it out, because I also wanted to suggest there is another online question, and I would also suggest to respond on that before we then go to the next round on the youth participation. And this is the question: it would be interesting to learn what mechanisms or approaches have proven effective in ensuring the voices of Roma and travelers are genuinely heard and reflected in decision making. Art, you already want to respond on that?
Yeah, just on that, I'm so glad it was raised, because the automatic selection of individuals, or the random selection of individuals, is based on a household. You know, so we write to 20,000 households based on where people live in Ireland, and travellers and the Roma community, they move around an awful lot, and the household isn't the best way to contact them. So I did notice that for the first 3 assemblies in Ireland, we didn't have any travellers. So I ran assemblies number 4 and 5, and on each of those occasions I made sure there was a traveller voice in the 100, because we asked our National Postal Service to identify the addresses of what we call halting sites, but there are temporary residences for people who move around. So give us the 800 sites that exist in Ireland. We wrote to all 800, and then based on the people that responded, we randomly selected a traveller voice for each of them. You know, so this is how you would deal with any ethnic minority. It's how you would deal with homeless people as well. You try and target them where you have to meet them where they are, you know. Just on the question on independence and, the question on propaganda and perhaps self-fulfilling prophecies or predetermined outcomes, this is what I referred to earlier about the importance of independence. You know, a citizens' assembly has to be a sealed unit. You know, they let people in that they want to hear from, but they have to be free to exclude other voices as well. And I mean, it is the most democratic of rooms, frustratingly so, for people who are trying to organize things. So trying to get 100 people to agree on anything is almost impossible, you know. So, but it's very important that the room decides on their program, who they want to hear from, et cetera, and that minimizes the attempt to get involved in any kind of interference, if you want to call it that.
Thank you very much. I also wanted to raise the example of, I think it was in Paris, when they really also made a big effort to include homeless people into a citizen assembly process, and this needs then also different approaches how to select and how to get people into the process, but very important question, and thank you for your answer. I would suggest looking at the time. I mean, we are still good. If there are no more urgent questions on the general citizen assembly topic, I would suggest now to move on to the question that was raised also particular on the youth participation. And with this question, I would like to open a second round to all the panelists to answer to this question. Can deliberative processes provide the necessary platform for youth participation, and if yes, why and how? And also again, as in the first round, what are the challenges and what are the risks for this in this context? And also just to link it to the question, if deliberative processes offer a more meaningful way of participation than voting or other forms of organizing like protesting or online activism, etc. So this is a very broad or a couple of questions now, and as this is very specific, I don't know who want to answer to which question, but I would like really each of the panelists to take the floor on that. And maybe we start on my left side. The floor is yours.
For the question is how we can actually connect the youth. We are actually waiting for answers because we don't know how we could reach young people. So if you have any ideas how we can just connect with them, then it would be nice really, because we just randomly find them, select them. It would be really nice, of course, to have a permanent process and people who I could actually talk together about different topics. We can see that in real life and online as well. We are really, really happy that in personal letters we can actually connect to many people, and so many people are interested. It means that people actually have the need for this process, for the deliberative democracy. Online, it's much harder, I think. Actually, what I see that what the biggest benefit of citizen assembly is that people from the biggest bubbles don't come. If I invite them to talk about the district's matters, those people come who actually have already the interest and the need for more. So that's why it wouldn't really be representative, and that young people who are already interested already are representatives. We cannot really represent it neutral. So that's why they are already involved in this sphere. That's why it doesn't really represent everyone. And in the second district, these are the young people actually who already have the strong background, strong knowledge. So actually, if you have an idea how we could connect to all of them, all young people, through maybe workshops or NGOs, it would be really good. Because it's very important. Of course, politics should first find these people and the participation of people, because it's a big challenge for us how we can actually connect young people with politics. Because, of course, now we are not in the most favorable situation.
Started also giving the question back to the audience, so I hope questions will be then there. Because he was asking, so how can we do it? Maybe there are some ideas. I would now switch to my right side. Maybe first, ladies first, if that is okay. I would give the floor to Eva, and then we come back to it.
Thank you so much. It's really hard to connect young people when we are talking about decision making, and I think the city assemblies are not exceptions under them. And I think the biggest challenge for organizers are always how to motivate the youth, how to support them. How to motivate them is that if we try and reach them well, then maybe society will acknowledge what it means to have city assemblies and how they can actually have a say in the matters that they are interested in. It's a really big challenge how we can make citizen assemblies for the youth. I think Estonia was the first one, the pioneer, that could implement a regional youth citizen assembly. There was one in Denmark. Cornelia mentioned the example of Switzerland. And now it's being actually organized, another one in Western Europe. That's why actually the answers and the data of the answers is quite low, because in Denmark that was like 1%, in Estonia that was also 1% of the respondents who wanted to actually take part in these assemblies. So there's room for improvement. Of course, we need to find the tools that we can actually reach them. In Tirana, we want to implement focus groups, and we try and see how we can actually connect to people, to young people, which platforms would be the better for us. The Swiss example was much better. That was 6% of answer, which is much better from the 1 to 6. But of course, in Switzerland, there is a bigger tradition for democratic representativeness. So that's why without the youth, we cannot actually rebuild democracy in the future. And that's why we have to cooperate them, we have to work together with them. And I think that the Council of Europe and the international organizations also have to jointly work together and try and connect to young people and how they should actually strengthen these connections.
I think you brought up also a very important point on this international cooperation and in this field. And this reminds me that just at the moment there is also a Young Citizen Assembly ongoing on EU level, Young Citizen Assembly on pollinators, which is also an expression of the importance to bring the efforts, international efforts together. Art. I would pass the question to you. How to engage citizens? Are the Citizens Assembly really a good platform for youth engagement? What are the risks? And why is it better than to go on the street and demonstrate or online activism and not enough than voting?
I think it is this direct connection with decision making that citizens' assemblies have become. You know, this crosses over a little bit into my real job. You know, that 40% of people who didn't vote in our general election last year said it was because they felt politics was nothing to do with their day-to-day lives. You know, and I mean, this is a shocking indictment of us as a state that we have made no attempt over the years to make that connection, not just with young people, but it's predominantly young people. 70% of people who are eligible to vote but are not registered to vote are under the age of 34, you know. So these are big, big jaw-dropping statistics that we really need to go and do something about. We had a particular problem, I suppose, with the biodiversity loss Citizens Assembly, because the recommendations that were being made by this representative group of Irish people was going to have implications for generations way behind us, you know, young people. So in tandem with our assembly, which was made up of 18 to, our oldest person was 94. So between 18 and 94, we ran a children's assembly for children between 7 and 17. And they were asked exactly the same questions. We gave them the same information in a much more accessible way, and we asked them to make recommendations. So these children turned up at the grown-ups assembly and said, we've had a look at that, and here's how we dealt with it, you know. And it was beyond a heartwarming experience. You know, there's something very emotional about it to see kids articulating some of the challenges as they see it. So their recommendations were reflected in the adults' report. Our assembly is well represented with 18 to 34-year-olds, so through our normal sortition processes, but it's not the only way of including a citizen voice. You know, we do ask for public submissions on every issue. We ask the public, what do you think we should do about biodiversity loss or illegal drugs or marriage equality? It's really, really hard to get young people to make submissions because we're all used to emailing in submissions, etc. So we ran a competition on social media where we allowed people to make TikTok videos, to make Instagram reels, and we said there is no wrong door into our Citizens' Assembly. Your voice has to be heard. And if you don't want to come in the front door with an emailed submission or posting us a letter, then come in the back door, down the chimney, in a side window. We don't care how your voice gets into the assembly as long as your voice is heard. So, like all things, I mean, with young people, you have to give them free stuff, you know, to incentivize them. So we gave away iPads and PlayStations to the best TikTok videos and Instagram reels, and that was very popular. My youngest two children are teenage girls, you know. They live their entire lives through the lens of TikTok. I would love for them to engage with mainstream media. That's not how they live their lives. So it's like every form of engagement with an audience. You have to meet people where they are. And for young people mostly, these spaces are virtual spaces now, so that's where we need to be. You know, makes it a bit complicated when you're trying to communicate because we have to use the old methods, and then we have to use the new virtual methods, and then we have to use all the individual other methods that deal with people who face barriers in communications, people with disabilities, immigrants who don't speak English as their first language, members of the traveller community who aren't in places where we normally are, and they want to hear from people like themselves, you know. So I turn up engaging people, and I have a nice suit and I have a shirt and tie. They don't want to hear from me. I'm really funny in a room, and people are highly entertained. But for deep and lasting, sustainable change, we need for young people to be speaking to young people, people with a disability, immigrants, all of these groups. And as they say themselves, nothing about us without us. And we need to learn that lesson, and we need to learn it really, really quickly, because this is a problem which is escalating out of control.
Bocsánat, még egy gondolat talán, hogy egyébként a részvételre nevel.
And sorry, just one question. So we should start teaching children, even from kindergarten, to be part of the community. So if we encourage children from the kindergarten age, and we show them that they have the opportunity to be involved in processes, projects like this, perhaps it could have a long-term effect. So as soon as we start this project and involve children, it's the better.
Excellent, thank you. I hope this answers also the question from the audience. I want to give also the floor to Laszlo, if you want to add something on this, did you manage to engage young people in the process?
Nem tudom, tudják-e?
I don't know if you know it or not, but Érd is the youngest Hungarian city, which means that the average age is 35-36, and every year 750 infants are born, not in Érd because we don't have a hospital, but they are born into Érd. So I believe it's extremely great, because I have been always seeking to be around young people. We have worked 2 to 3 participants under the age of 30 in our small municipality with whom we work together. And we have youth government, youth municipality in Érd. It has the same process like the real municipality. So we have a young mayor, a young deputy mayor. We have 4 high schools, and in a democratic campaign we have democratic voting, and these young representatives are elected in this way. We give them 10 million Hungarian forints, which is quite a big sum of money. And I just want to highlight this is a municipality for the young. So we always encourage them to use this amount not for organizing parties, but for clever purposes. So we teach them how to make decisions within the municipality body. We explain them that they have to, they shouldn't be afraid of having a discussion. We create games, for example, in the question of abortion. There are two groups, one pro, one against. They are having discussions, and after that they change sides. So we use this kind of games to include them into democracy. And of course, they have a word in questions which are about them. So when we have sport projects that can be reached by the municipalities, and the government sponsor these kind of projects. So for example, they are going to have a pump track. I wasn't sure that I would choose this opportunity to have a track like this, but decided so. So I had to decide to have the pump track in there. So we realized that the majority of the youngsters use their phones to actually live, and we should find these ways and possibilities to find a direct contact with them. So I just wanted to highlight that there aren't so many youngsters on Facebook. If I want to reach them, I use TikTok. Yesterday, I put a video on TikTok because we are going to have a bicycle march. And only people between 18 and 40 reach or saw this video. So what is really important that every kind of body should include someone who is in their 20s, and in this way they could learn how to do democracy.
Thank you very much. Looking at the clock, at the watch, I think we can take one or two urgent questions, if there are some, or also answers to the question of... Yes, okay.
Hello. May I just answer to the question of the mayor, Mr. Orszli, from my district where I live? My name is Nelly Gishian. I work here at the European Youth Center Budapest as an educational advisor working for the Council of Europe. And I really wanted to reply to your question. Maybe from our experience, I can share something that we are very much proud here in the youth sector of the Council of Europe is the co-management system, which is Advisory Council on Youth. I will not take time to explain what is this about, but I would highly encourage you maybe to check, where we have a large representation of young people, in this case Europe, but maybe it would be a very good example to cover also on local reality, where we invite young people just to speak up, to be empowered, and to feel the responsible part of shaping today's and future of Europe, and not just to be considered, as you were also very fairly mentioning, about just being future of Europe. And in this case, we know that by empowering and giving the space young people to be part of this shaping process, we just give this opportunity for them to be in a right place in a right moment, rather than being empowered by some radical groups just because they felt heard. So we provide this space, and maybe just Advisory Council on Youth would be good coding to remember and double check, but we are here around whenever you need. We can share our great experiences with you. Thank you.
That's very important announcement. Was there another question I saw in this row? No more questions. Also online, I did not see a question. Balint, question or closing?
Not a closing yet. Just a question, and maybe it's primarily to Art and Eva, but I think perhaps the mayors can also reflect. You mentioned that there's a very important element of informing, as Mayor Csőzik also said, of informing those who participate in these assemblies about the issues that they're about to discuss and deliberate on. And, you know, how would you answer those cynical or critical of this particular element, to say, how do you choose those who inform? How do you make sure that the information that the people participating receive is accurate and independent and verifiable and not sort of influenced by one or another viewpoint? Because I think that's clearly quite important, so that decisions are also rooted in evidence and fact and reality.
There's an easy answer to that, in that we don't choose them at all. The citizens choose them. So in our assembly, when we're looking at issues, we look for the best experts in the world on this particular issue. We can beam them in. Some of them live in Ireland anyway, so or we can beam them in, and we give the citizens the list. Here are the best experts in the world on this particular subject. Here's their biographies. Who do you want to hear from? You pick. You know, so and the second half of that, which is really very important, that at this initial fact-finding stage of the process, we don't allow our experts to express an opinion. And I mean, this is hugely frustrating for experts, you know, because they've been working their entire lives on this particular subject and they know the answer, you know, and we say, well, you can tell them everything right up to the point where you express an opinion. All we want to know is the facts, you know, what's the state of the world here? What's the law all about? What does the law say? What are the options here? And we don't allow them to say in this initial phase what they think they should do. We leave that till much later on in the process when we bring in advocates on either side of the argument. So but we have to ensure that all the citizens have a basic understanding of the issues at hand.
Thank you very much, Art. Eva, you would like to add something to that?
Only just a couple of ideas. Publicity and consultations are extremely important in these processes. So in our working processes, we have this learning phase, and we invite those experts who are competent in the given fields, in the given issues, and we are asked, actually, who are those to be involved further as further experts and influencers, who we should invite to be part of these assemblies. So this whole preparation process has several steps, and what Art has already mentioned, we should give the opportunity for those who are involved in the assemblies that they should have the possibility to choose those with whom they would like to have a consultation with. And what is really important, that all of the processes should be balanced. So if we have a controversial issue, both sides should be heard, and we should give the opportunity for everyone to learn all of those sides based on which they have the possibility to have opinion.
Very much, Eva. I think that is also a good closure topic, and in this case, in this context, I wanted to remind that citizen assemblies are not like an experiment, or it's not like they don't happen at an ad hoc basis, but they really follow, if done well, as we said it in the beginning, they follow really a clear methodology, and including the selection of experts, the briefing of experts who then provide the information to the selected citizens. So also this follows clear standards and clear criteria. And here also to remind again the recommendation of Council of Europe on deliberative democracy, which the Committee of Ministers adopted in 2023, was exactly aimed to ensure this, that member states, Council of Europe member states really follow this clear methodology and follow these standards in order to ensure that this is a transparent and effective and a meaningful process, and cannot be jeopardized and hijacked by political interests and specific political interests and interest lobby group. I think with this, I will close, looking at the watch. I have the task to summarize, which is an extremely difficult task because there were so many aspects we touched upon. But just maybe to remind, we heard examples from Ireland, from citizen assemblies at national level. We heard examples from Hungary on local level from the 2 municipalities. Very successful examples, excellent results. And we have seen citizen assemblies are proven an excellent strategy, an excellent tool to find solution for either very complex issues or very controversial issues. As we have seen with the examples with Ireland, very controversial issues could be put further and decided with the help, with the support of citizens' assemblies, and also very complex issues which, for example, now are ongoing in the Women Assembly in the 2nd district, will be resolved, can be resolved with the strategy, with the tool of citizen assemblies. But I think the baseline, and that's the most important, essential for them to be sustainable, impactful, essential to be meaningful for a future is to reach out to youth, to young people. And so every citizen assembly has to have really this very strong aspect of engaging, reaching out to youth. And there is also additional the need to organize very specifically young citizen assemblies, youth citizen assemblies, as we have seen in Switzerland, as we see at the moment at the EU level, because this is an opportunity for young people not only to shape the process and to be part of the process and shape this democratic instrument. It also shapes the understanding of young people of democracy, those who have the opportunity to participate, to be involved. We have seen that and we have heard that from testimonies of young 16-year-old girls from Greece just recently, when she explained how this shaped her understanding of the world, of politics, of democratic institutions, just being part in such a citizen assembly process. So it's very important and essential to include, involve young people. And I also want to remind something that in the very beginning came up, and you didn't stress it very much this time, but you have stressed it in other panel discussions a lot. Investing in citizen assemblies, putting money, putting the budget for a citizen assembly is not a cost, but it's rather an investment in development, investment, a long-term investment in shaping the future of a community, of a society. And I think with this, I would like to hand over to Balint to say the last words, to close this event. I would like to thank the panelists for their excellent contributions, for the really very diverse picture that you painted jointly with the audience. Also, thanks for the excellent question. Also, thank you for the online participation. We cannot see you, but we got your good questions. And so again, thank you for the organizers. And now over to you, Balint.
Thank you very much, Nela. And since I am the one who stands between you and a very delicious lunch, thank you for Irish Partners for providing it. I just want to thank you for turning up, for showing up in person, online. Of course, I want to thank our panelists, Mayor Urshi, Mayor Csőzik, our fantastic moderator, Nela, Art, and Eva, for this very interesting, provocative, and insightful discussion, which, as I said, we hope is the first step in a process, in a longer process of our engagement with the topic of deliberative democracy through the European Youth Center Budapest and the youth sector of the Council of Europe. And as my colleague Nelly has mentioned, the Council of Europe has been modeling meaningful youth participation and youth engagement through its own co-management system, which it still, unfortunately, remains the exception rather than the rule. But I am fervently believing that deliberative democracy, deliberative processes are the way forward for meaningful youth participation, for broadening the possibilities for young citizens to engage meaningfully with politics, with democracy, which I think is needed now more than perhaps ever in the last 50 years. We are in a very important moment in our histories to protect our democratic advances, to reinvigorate our democracies, to rejuvenate our democratic institutions. And I really want to thank those in the forefront of this effort for leading the way and providing examples. And just a final comment to our Mayor Urshi. You mentioned your initiative of a Youth Citizens Assembly in the 2nd District. As your guests here in the district, we would be very interested in hearing more about it and seeing in what way the Council of Europe and the European Youth Center Budapest can support that initiative. And with that, I wish you a good day and bon appetit. Thank you very much.